Innovation and Entrepreneurship for Climate Action. To deliver this webinar, we are fortunate to have a special guest with us today, Dr. Kurian Joseph, Professor and Director, Center for Climate Change and Disaster Management, Anna University, Tamil Nadu. On behalf of TrekStep and EU Genie project, we are very glad to welcome you to this webinar, sir. As you all know, TrekStep with the European Union funded Genie project, which is Gender Enabling Network of Innovation and Entrepreneurship CSOs for Climate Venture project, has been organizing series of capacity development programs in NGO management, project management, women social venture. For promoting women entrepreneurship initiatives and climate change focused areas, it's very critical that we, the CSOs, develop knowledge on climate change impacts, their adaptation needs and things. Because we are going to cater to the women beneficiaries who are mostly the worst hit of due to the climate change impacts. Hence, this webinar on innovation and entrepreneurship for climate action is very important for us. Our special guest, Professor Dr. Joseph, Professor and Director, Center for Climate Change and Disaster Management, Anna University, Tamil Nadu, has nearly 4 decades of R&D expertise in solid and hazardous waste management, environmental management systems, pollution prevention, zero discharge systems, membrane technologies, environmental economics, disaster resilience, sustainable development, climate change adaptation and mitigation. Professor Dr. Joseph is currently leading the prestigious Climate Studio initiative of Government of Tamil Nadu. He is also the member of various climate change associations in the country, and he is also involved in many disaster management initiatives in the country. His seminal research work on waste management has won international award from Italy. He had authored nearly 100 research articles in national and international journals and co-authored several books. He is currently implementing several research projects of Government of India in climate change areas. And we really thank you, sir, because you have readily accepted our request to address our national CSO network, who are going to work towards women entrepreneurship initiatives in climate change areas in the next coming 2 years. So this webinar will be really helpful for our ventures. We welcome you again, sir. Over to you now, sir.
Thank you. Am I audible?
You are audible, sir.
Okay. My presentation is also visible?
Yes, it is visible, sir.
Okay. So, good afternoon, all the participants. Okay, I'm also very glad to be part of this webinar. Of course, maybe this is the first time I'm addressing a group like this, and also addressing a group in the afternoon on webinar is a challenge. On 2 accounts, we are not seeing face to face. We don't know each other. So I have prepared a presentation keeping in mind the fact that you have some knowledge on climate change, but at the same time, you want to learn more so that you'll be able to support climate action. So keeping that in mind, this presentation is prepared. So I will take about an hour to present what I have in mind. During the course of time, you are welcome to put your questions or comments so that at the end, we'll be able to have a discussion. Of course, the title, as Bindu has already explained, is going to be on how do we support innovation and entrepreneurship for climate action. And when we talk about climate action, broadly, if you look at it's basically how do we reduce the emission of greenhouse gases, which is the base cause for climate change. And this greenhouse gases comes primarily from our use of fossil fuel in terms of carbon dioxide. There are also other gases like methane, then nitrous oxide, even chlorofluorocarbons. Now, all these things are produced as part of our day-to-day activities of energy consumption, transportation or mobility, even agricultural activities. I understand that most of the CSR which participating in this event are connected with food systems and agriculture. So we should be able to see the connections between what we do, and if possible we should be able to analyze these connections, because there could be different connections that are possible. So we should be able to know which is the priority connection, where we need to focus, we need to take actions so that we can create a climate positive biosphere, so that the earth, which has sustained for billions of years, will be able to sustain for many more billions of years. So keeping that in mind, I have few slides initially which focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. Then I will get into climate action. Then we will see how this climate action could be connected with entrepreneurship, with some case studies on what people are doing. I will also discuss what we are doing. As you are all part of this entrepreneurship movement, you know what is the importance of innovation, which is basically a combination of uh, how do we combine our creativity and commercialize that. Basically, in terms of new ideas, development of new goods or services or practices which are useful to the society. So the groups which are participating will have diverse ideas and diverse uh, possibilities for innovation. It could be related to some product or it could be related to process. So my presentation will be generic. It is for you to decide how do we take this idea forward. And if we keep in mind one of the proverb attributed to Abraham Lincoln, who says the best way to predict the future is to create it. So here we are discussing how do we create a sustainable future so that our current generation and also the generations who are uh, coming will have well-being, enhanced well-being. There is also a Chinese proverb which says that when there is winds of change, some people build walls, whereas some other people put windmills. So how do we react to a given situation also could differ. So there are different possibilities. So here you get introduced to the risk or the challenge of climate change, which basically opens up opportunities for innovation and entrepreneurship. So we open with an open mind to start looking for not just the right answer, but look for many right answers as relevant to your context, and then try to propagate. And of course, when we propagate, you won't be able to do it alone, especially when it comes to climate action. Always please keep in mind the action requires collaboration. So collaboration of different stakeholders. And when we talk about innovation, so they talk about 10 key dimensions of innovation, which could be related to how do we confer things, how do we offer things, and how do we materialize. For example, how do we connect others to create value? How do we align your talent, your assets to create value for the society? And how do we have your own signature, especially with reference to addressing this climate action? But in essence, whatever we are talking is basically with reference to how effectively we will be able to address the issue of climate change in an efficient manner. So in whatever we do, if you are able to improve efficiency, you will be able to see that that will be a climate action. So it is left to you to look for opportunities and create your own ideas, try to validate, try to develop solutions, deploy it, evaluate it, improvise it based on these presentations. And as I understand, there are different types of entrepreneurs, but this group is primarily social entrepreneurs, where you would like to have innovative ways of addressing community problems, where you need to be flexible, you need to be knowledgeable, you need to be hardworking, creative, persistent, and also you should be able to uh, be responsive to suggestions and criticism with reference to how do we address the issue of climate change. So innovators are supposed to identify and capture the opportunities. So what are the opportunities the climate change is bringing to us in terms of challenges and risk, so that we'll be able to transform these opportunities into uh, goods or services or processes or methods which could help solving the social problem. Now, to give you a background to this issue, of course, climate change is not the only problem that we, the society or the world is facing. So this is a beautiful diagram by a famous economist, Rava, where she has tried to communicate the safe and the just space that we human beings have in this world is just limited. It is just limited within two rings. One is an inner ring of social foundations, which means there are several needs of the society which we need to address. Just because there is climate change, we can't say that these social problems need not be addressed. Okay, so our challenge is how do we meet the needs of the 8 billion plus humans of this world and who are yet to come in terms of food, water, energy, health, education, housing. Of course, there are also social dimensions in terms of gender balance, social equities, political dimensions, peace, justice, income for our livelihoods. So there are several social minimums which we are still to attain on one end. Whereas at the same time, there are ecological ceiling, that is the second circle. So the climate change is one area where we have crossed this ecological ceiling. So we should be able to meet our social minimums within the planetary limits. Already we have crossed it with reference to one area, that is climate change. There are also other areas where the limits are crossed, like biodiversity loss, the land conversions, the eutrophication. There are also other areas where we are moving towards crossing the planetary limits. So, not
Sir, your
only
voice is getting low, sir.
hello,
Sir,
you're
your
able to-
voice is getting low.
are you able to hear?
It's
Very
Hello?
low, sir.
it's slightly low, sir. I think you
Yeah,
should
yeah.
keep.
Not slightly.
No, we are hearing perfectly. Probably there is some mistake in your system.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Here also he is purely audible. No issue for me.
Audible, but it is very low.
சார் குமாரவேல் சார், நீங்க உங்க ஸ்பீக்கர் சவுண்டை இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்ணிக்கங்க சார். உங்களுக்கு தான் பிரச்சனை.
ஃபுல்லா தான் சார் வச்சிருக்கேன்.
சரி பண்ணிக்கங்க. ரைட் சார்.
Okay.
ஜோசப்
Most
சார்,
of,
please.
yeah, most of you are hearing well.
Yes, sir. Most of us are hearing.
Okay, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. So what I was saying is there is a, limited space where only we human beings can operate. Already we are in a situation where the social minimums are not met for at least 25% of the world population in terms of energy, in terms of the different basic needs which we looked at. At the same time, we have crossed the planetary boundaries, at least with reference to the climate change. Now, the climate change is basically in terms of a change in a blessing that we had, which is maintaining life in this planet Earth. That is in terms of a greenhouse effect. Okay. To our knowledge, life is there only on this planet. And that is primarily because we have the right warmthness, right temperature on this Mother Earth. If you look at other planets, there are planets which are either very hot or very cold. But the global average temperature, pre-industrial area, if you take, it was about 13.5 to 14 degree. That was the blessing which helped life to develop and propagate on this planet. Now, basically, as a result of these activities, we are making a change in temperature, and that is connected with many other dimensions of the weather or the climate. For example, if we have to meet our food requirements, of course, that requires that we need to have land. So when you need more land, we convert forests. So forests are one of the sink which is balancing the emission of carbon dioxide. So it's basically the balance of this greenhouse gas is lost as a result of our activities. So the blanket, which was really there to protect us, now we are increasing the thickness of this blanket, and that blanket is made up of certain gases, primarily carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and chlorofluorocarbons as a result of this. Now, these different dimensions, they are not independent, they are connected. So for food requirement, we reduce forest. Forest means our biodiversity gets connected. It is also addressed. And when we have to produce food, since I'm talking about food because most of you are connected with food or food related activities. Even to produce food, there is a lot of energy that is required as input to the agricultural activities, even for food processing. Okay, so just because climate change is happening, we can't live without food. So we need to have food. At the same time, we need to address the issue of climate change. And when there is climate change, to grow the food, we need water. Now, the climate change primary impact is going to be on the hydrological cycle. We are going to have more intense rains and more intense droughts, which is going to affect our growing of food. And of course, food growth is also connected with other things. So basically, to summarize, what we are saying is, if we have to be a sustainable society, then the nature should not be subject to a systematic increase in terms of concentration of substances like carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases, as what we were showing, and also the concentration of substances that we produce as part of our consumption and production activities. And third dimension, the nature which was there to balance this is getting degraded. So the capacity of the nature to balance, for example, in terms of forest, which is primarily the carbon sink, the deforestation activities, and also the water resources, which are essential for any activity, is getting drained. And of course, in the world, there is also a lot of social inequities. So globally, these issues are recognized, and globally we have now an action framework. I hope all of you are aware of this. This is what we call it as Sustainable Development Goals. In 2015, the whole world agreed on this framework where we have 17 goals. Of the 17 goals, the 13th goal is what we are talking, the climate action. So we are having 17 things to be achieved, of which one of the thing is what we are going to focus. So when we keep that focus, we should not forget about all other things. Now, the key and the most important aspect is that if we are addressing other goals, the climate change issue is going to be aggravated. So the challenge is, how do we meet these different goals together? If you have to address poverty, which is our number one goal, hunger, that is the next goal, health, that is the third goal. Unless we address climate change, we won't be able to address this basic social goal. That is where our actions becomes important, and the entrepreneurship, especially entrepreneurship related to environmental goals, becomes important. But as compared to many other lines of entrepreneurship, the environmental entrepreneurship is a bit challenging, because though everybody wants good environment, but all of us may not be willing to pay for it because it is a common property. So if somebody takes care of it, everybody gets the benefit of it. If all of us are getting benefit of it, we are trying to overuse it. So this is basically the challenge. In economic terms, people call it as tragedy of the commons. So how do we take care of our common atmosphere, which had this greenhouse gas layer, which was protecting and providing us the right warmness for life and human life to exist and flourish, which is now in a danger. This is possible only in terms of changing our production and consumption. That is where the entrepreneurship opportunities come, by developing eco-friendly products, which requires maybe process innovations, reduction in pollution, reduction in waste, developing eco-efficient manufacturing, efficient packaging, developing renewable sources of energy and materials, and also working with low carbon footprint. We'll talk about carbon footprint and other things in the subsequent slides. So basically, how do we reduce the footprint of what we consume, what we produce, is the opportunities. And why we need to do? Because the climate change brings in risk related to different dimensions of the social space, the safe space that we talked about. Primarily, as I have told you, it starts with changes in the hydrologic cycle. Because that is because of the changes in the weather, extreme weather conditions in terms of extreme rainfalls, extreme hot temperatures. This already we have started experiencing. It's not just theory. Now we have started facing. Because this issue was recognized long back, and we had a global agreement as of 1992, which is called the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And as a follow-up, every year, almost every alternate years, the world leaders are meeting and discussing how do we take actions to address the challenges.
So
The
there is
challenges,
disturbance in the presentation, sir. Presentation is
Hello?
not visible.
presentation is not visible.
So yeah, I think you have stopped sharing, sir.
Is shared only.
No, sir. Now it is
Yes.
okay, sir.
Okay. Is it visible?
Yes, sir, visible.
Okay, now it is visible.
Okay. So you're seeing three rings. At the center is the climate change. And what is the kind of a change that we are talking? That is what is in the middle cycle. But how that is going to affect the society is what is there in the outer cycle. So it is going to affect food security or food insecurity. It is going to affect our water supply. It is going to have climate conflict, which will lead to migration of people. It is going to lead to localized flooding, especially flooding in coastal regions due to sea level rise. It could damage the ecosystem, especially the marine ecosystems. And if that is happening, our fishery is going to be affected, again connected with food. The biodiversity is going to be affected. And also there is going to be heat stress, especially for urban habitats. There is also possibilities of increase in pest and associated diseases. So the impacts of climate change is in different dimensions of the society. Some could be very extreme and fast. Some could be very slow and it will take time. The extreme and fast events already we have started experiencing in terms of floods, droughts, cyclones, heat waves, storm surges that is occurring, and also the increase in temperature. The slow processes, it is happening. We may not be able to see it, but we are experiencing that also in terms of loss of biodiversity, in terms of sea level rise, in terms of salinity increase, especially in coastal areas, land and forest degradation. So all these things could be connected with climate change, though there could be many other factors which also contribute to this. So we should be able to develop a capacity to anticipate the kind of changes in the specific community or the society where you are working, so that you'll be able to develop capacity to adapt and absorb and this needs to happen in a very fast manner, because if we act fast, there is still hope that we will be able to contain it within the acceptable limits. If not, we will be having more of this kind of situations which we are experiencing in our local communities itself. This was a situation from Kerala flood, and our farmers are also facing this kind of situations in different parts of the world, including our communities. Especially if you take to our farmers are getting affected on two accounts. Because of flood also they get affected, because it's not just flood, it is the intense rainfall. Intense rainfall means the average rainfall increase maybe 10% or 20%. That is what is projected to happen in the next 20 to 30 years. But more than that, the rainfall which was occurring over a long period of time is going to occur in short period of time. So the intensity is going to be higher. And when intense rainfall occurs, that also leads to crop damage and food losses, and then of course the food prices goes up. That kind of a connection is there. Now, how do we look at this and develop response? Basically, this is a framework which scientists use to analyze any problem. We look at the driver which creates what kind of pressure, and where the pressure is created in terms of the state, and what is the kind of a pressure or the change that happens, that is the impact, and what kind of response by which we will be able to address this. Of course, the response has to be related to the driving forces, the pressure, the state, as well as the impact. Now, when it comes to how do we respond to the impact, in our case, the climate change, we call that as climate change adaptation. How do we get ready to face sea level rise? How do we get ready to live with floods or droughts or change in ecological degradation, or how do we get ready to face environmental refugees, or how do we get ready to face decline in food supply, or as a result the kind of political unrest, other kind of a social unrest that is going to come. That is what broadly we call as adaptation, climate change adaptation. That is one group of response. The second response, not second, the other group of response is mitigation. How do we address the root cause of the problem, which basically I have told you is the greenhouse gases, which basically is due to our form of consumption and production, which of course starts with our population, our number, not only our population, the technology, our consumption patterns, which releases this emission of greenhouse gases, primarily due to the energy which is dependent on fossil fuel, and also consumption of energy intensive materials for our activities like cement, steel, etc. And also changes in the land use, especially deforestation, which leads to increased release of greenhouse gases, which leads to increase in temperature. That is what is the background of this climate action. As I was telling, climate action is one of the Sustainable Development Goals. It is SDG 13, and there are basically 3 targets. When we talk about climate action, it is the first action target is how do we strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity to climate related disasters. Second, how do we integrate climate change measures into policies and planning? And third, of course, how do we build knowledge? How do we develop capacity to meet climate change? There are also supporting actions to achieve these targets in terms of how do we implement the global agreements related to climate change and climate action in terms of UNFCCC and the associated decisions. The latest decision is our 2015 agreement related to climate action target. That is what is referred to as Paris Agreement. In Paris Agreement in 2015, all the global leaders agreed that we should not or we should take action in such a way that we'll be able to limit the global warming within 2 degrees centigrade. Ideally, 1.5 degrees centigrade. So for that, there are mechanisms and also including financial sharing of responsibilities is to be done at global level. If that is not happening, if we proceed the way we are progressing now, there is a possibility that by the end of this century, 2100, the global temperature would rise to 4 to 6 degrees centigrade. But there is possibility of action and action pathways in such a way that we'll be able to keep this global warming to acceptable levels, which is somewhere between 1.5 degree to 2 degrees centigrade. Now, where actions are required is primarily in sources which emits this greenhouse gas. About 25% of it is coming from electricity production from fossil fuel. And another 15% we can attribute to our transport, mobility, which also uses fossil fuel. Of course, there is also a lot of energy usage in building. There is about 25% of greenhouse gas emissions attributed to food, agriculture, and land use changes. Industries is another key sector, about 21%. There are also other sectors. So if you take any action that we do require energy, and if that energy is coming from fossil fuel, we are party to this action. So how the future will be, nobody is able to tell, because it depends upon how many people are going to be there, how we are going to produce, how we are going to consume. So the climate scientists have considered different possibilities. And right from the beginning of this climate change discussions, climate scientists were developing these future possibilities, and they analyze this and come out in the form of reports. This is done by a global committee which is set up, which is called IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So this IPCC makes an assessment of the scientific knowledge related to climate change. Periodically, they publish reports. The recent report is called the 6th assessment report. Now, as per the 6th assessment report, which was published last year, they do this projection based on the shared socio-economic pathways, in abbreviated as SSP. So in climate science, when people talk about climate projection, they will say climate projection as per SSP. Now, SSP also, there are different possibilities. One possibility is all of us act in the best way and move towards sustainability and achieve the Paris target, which is a temperature level less than 1.5 degree. There is an extreme possibility all of us go the way we are doing. Fossil fuel development will take place. SSP 5, it is called, and where the extreme temperatures could rise 4.5 or 5 degree. But if we take along with fossil fuel based development, enough mitigation action, even with fossil fuel development, there is a possibility that we can be somewhere near to the Paris Agreement. There are also other possibilities, maybe a mid-path scenario, or there could be disparities in terms of, because these actions needs to be taken globally by 200 plus countries. So all the countries will have to work together. That is the key challenge. Now, whether we take action or not, the globe, the Mother Earth will not wait. The fever of the Mother Earth will increase. Currently, the global temperature is estimated to be about 1.2 degrees centigrade as compared to pre-industrial area. And at the current pace of this global warming, it is projected to reach 1.5 degrees centigrade by 2033 and 2 degrees centigrade by 2016. It is in this background that the global community has agreed by Paris Agreement that by 2050, we should take actions in such a way that we will be able to limit it not exceeding 2 degrees centigrade. Though people still feel this 1.5 degree and 2 degree are not big increases because we are exposed to wide variations in temperature. So this is where we need to be very clear about this temperature increase we are talking is with reference to the global average temperature. We can say it's the temperature of the Mother Earth. So the temperature of the Mother Earth increasing means the Mother Earth is getting fever. So we should feel like we getting fever, maybe 1 degree fever, you are able to adjust. 1.5, you'll be able to adjust. But beyond that, your body will not adjust, your organs will fail. So the same thing is going to happen to the Mother Earth. And that is what is reflected in terms of the shivering of the Mother Earth, in terms of extreme weather, species degradation, impact on water availability, impact on sea level rise, especially which will have impact on our food systems and ultimately affecting the cost. For example, here what you see is a comparison of 1.5 degrees centigrade scenario with 2 degrees centigrade scenario. Because I don't have time to explain, but the point is that even this half degree increase is going to have significant change. For example, in terms of extreme weather, at 1.5 degrees centigrade, if flood risk is going to increase by 100%, at 2 degrees centigrade, it is going to increase by 170%. The species extinction, 6% of insects, 8% of plants, 4% of vertebrates, if it is going to be affected at 1.5 degree, it is going to be doubled at 2 degrees centigrade. So the kind of world's population that are likely to be affected at 1.5 degree itself is about 10% of the world population, which means 700 millions of people will be getting affected as a result of this, and which will increase by threefold, which means about 2 billion, almost 1/3 of the global population will be hit in terms of the different hazards that we talked about. And the most important aspect is the people who will be hit will not be the people who are contributory to the problem. Okay. Primarily, the contributor people are the rich, and of course, we can say the early developers who have contributed to the problem. But the most people who will be hit will be the poor and also the countries who are just at the initial stages of this development. So there is a climate injustice. The developed countries who are responsible for almost 60% of this cumulative emissions will not be the one who is going to be the hit. It will be the poor people, especially of the developing countries, which have contributed the least to the problem, but they will be hit because they have the least capacity to cope up with the kind of challenges that this brings in. So there is this equity issues associated with that. That is what is a big debate which happens in most of this conference of parties. How do we share our responsibilities? So what was agreed was that the common goal is that now each country will make its own action plan, which ultimately combined to see whether we will be able to achieve the global goal. This country level action plan is called nationally determined contributions. I'll come to that in one of the next slides. Our country also has made pledge at global platform saying that we will take steps. Now, when this kind of actions or non-action is taking place, it is going to have impact on business and enterprises on two directions. One, the extreme weather impacts and the associated risk will have impact on the assets and the climate and the supply chains of your business. So if you are entrepreneurs already having some business supply chains and assets, there is likelihood that this could be impacted. And there is a projection that global economy could lose up to about 18% as a result of this climate change impact. Second is that this gives you the opportunity to innovate so that we can adopt to low carbon technologies, low carbon practices in terms of renewable energy, in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of circular economy models, in terms of sustainable agriculture, sustainable forestry, and also carbon capture and storage. So the purpose of this meet, I think, is basically to sensitize you so that you'll be able to seize these economic opportunities and also take advantage of being climate leaders and also capture the associated climate market, by which we'll be able to reduce the physical risk in terms of heat wave, in terms of flooding, in terms of drought, in terms of its associated impacts on the agriculture, especially food, and also the associated economy-wide transition risk in terms of the abatement cost that we need to incur, which ultimately will be transferred back to the consumers in terms of carbon price or fossil fuel cost rise or electricity price or increase in crop prices or the food prices. Now, given this background, now how do we get ready to face? I have generally said there is going to be risk and there is going to be problem. But then how do we act? How do we focus our actions? That also requires a scientific approach. To understand this, any risk is the result of the hazard. Here, there are different hazards. We said some are fast hazard, some are slow hazard. Just because there is a hazard, that doesn't mean that there will be a risk. The hazard has to be exposed. So, in a given situation, what are the possible hazards? What is the exposure level? Exposure, here we talk about the exposed population, the people, or the exposed ecosystem, or the exposed assets in terms of buildings or the infrastructure. And just because you are exposed also, it is not necessary that you will be at risk. It also depends upon the vulnerability of the exposed. So, a combination of the hazard, the exposure, the vulnerability. Now, the vulnerability depends upon the sensitivity. For example, if you take the population, all the people are not equally sensitive with reference to the different kind of hazards. And there are also certain capacities which, if it is there, you'll be able to face the kind of situation, especially in terms of the adaptive capacity. So, the hazards will not have the possibility to turn into disasters if we are able to address the exposure and the vulnerability through appropriate response actions. For example, if you take agriculture, risk to farmers in the agricultural sector. Basically, the risk will be in terms of yield losses or land degradation as a consequence of increasing temperatures, the droughts, and also the heavy rainfall events, which will prevent us from achieving one of the targets of SDG 2. In SDG 2.4, we have a targets pertains to sustainable food production systems. Now, this will be arising from the hazards of increase in the temperature, droughts, and heavy rainfall events, which will have several potential impacts, and also the exposed systems like the kind of plants or the crops or the farmers, the agricultural sector, and that also have associated targets. Because we have looked at the vulnerability factors of this state, since the participants are from different states. I don't want to deal with it, but each state has got its own environmental, social, and economic factors which increases or reduces the vulnerability. For example, Tamil Nadu, if you take primarily, it is a rain-fed agriculture thing. So which means if the hydrological drought or flood is going to be there, it is going to increase the sensitivity. We have a very long coastal length, which increases sensitivity in terms of impacts due to cyclones, impacts due to sea level rise. The heat waves will increase. It will reduce the soil moisture. It will affect our health. It increases the evapotranspiration. So it also increases. So if you look at, there are several indicators which increase the sensitivity, which means which makes us more vulnerable. Because there are certain factors which can enhance our adaptive capacity. One is forest cover. So forest cover, if you are able to safeguard, if you are able to increase, that is a one excellent adaptive option by which some of the risk will be able to reduce. Similarly, there are social vulnerability factors, economic vulnerability indicators, so which varies from place to place. So what is required is, when you are working in a particular community or a particular locality, look at the associated vulnerability of the group or the community or the society or the exposed people or the structure or the economic system, and assess how resilient they are. Means what is the ability of that system or the community or the society which is likely to get exposed to this hazard to resist or to absorb or to accommodate or to recover from the effects in a timely and efficient manner, including they should be able to preserve and restore what may get lost in terms of the ecological functions or the economic functions. Of course, it requires capacities in different dimensions, technical capacities, skill development, education, improvement in economic status, appropriate supporting institutions, especially supporting livelihood, assets, infrastructure. So the dimensions are very broad. So in our Center for Climate Change and Disaster Management, Madam Bindu was referring to a climate studio where we are working on 5 key sectors: the water resources sector, agriculture sector, forestry sector, coastal ecosystem, and cities, with reference to Tamil Nadu, how the climate scenario will change, and under that changed scenario, how these sectors, what is the risk, what is the flood risk, what is the drought risk, how the key agricultural products are going to be affected, their productivity is going to be affected, how the forestry is going to be affected, how the coastal communities are going to be affected. So my advice is, don't just start onto your project. You should look at such studies. Here we are working primarily focusing on Tamil Nadu. So in the state where you are working, maybe there are institutions which are looking at such studies, or if you want us to associate with you, we'll be able to support and we'll be able to tell where you need to focus in terms of assessing the possible hazard, assessing the vulnerability of the particular group or the section in terms of the potential exposure, so that we'll be able to tell where to focus and what kind of strategies we should be focusing. Of course, the strategies will be broadly in 3 categories. As I was telling, one is mitigation, another is adaptation. Now, adaptation has got 2 aspects. Was one in terms of enhancing the carbon sink. Okay, another in terms of facing the different kinds of disasters or the risk that we are likely to face. So to understand this is explained in terms of a tank, because which is nothing but our atmosphere, to which we are pumping in greenhouse gases. So if you have to ensure that the tank is not overflowing, that is what is our climate change problem.
வழக்கு விசாரணையை செப்டம்பர் 22ஆம் தேதிக்கு ஒத்திவைத்தனர்.
Hello.
நீதிபதி உத்தரவுக்கு எதிராக
Mr. Benjamin, Mr.
Hello.
Jabaraj Benjamin, who's,
Hello.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Now, so we have 2 options, mitigation and adaptation. Now, mitigation is how do we cut, how do we reduce, or how do we address the root cause. Now, this is something which is to be done by everybody at a global level. Collectively, we need to do, and all of us have agreed that we will collectively do, so that the global average temperature rise will be able to keep within 2 degrees centigrade by reducing our emissions, by enhancing our forest or carbon sink, and especially by looking at clean energy options, energy efficiency, and afforestation action. The adaptation is something that we individually has to do to face the situation, because mitigation is a group task and we are not sure how others will act. Okay, so this is a big challenge, especially when there is a common problem which is to be solved by everybody, and if all are going to get benefited, always there is the economic explanation in terms of free riding and who will share the cost. So this is what is happening at global level. We developing countries are always debating that the developed countries who have contributed more to the problem and who is having more advanced technologies, they should be able to share the technologies. They should also be able to share the cost of mitigation. So this discussions is going on. But if we wait, we are going to face more hazards and risks. So we should also get ready to face the situation in terms of addressing the effect by adjusting to actual unexpected effects, by reducing the risk or by enhancing the resilience. So this is where local actions are required, depending upon specific local situations, to address the disasters, to improve the nature-based solutions. And the broadly, these actions are now referred to as action towards net zero. Net zero means we are looking at a situation where the greenhouse gases that we are emitting is either reduced or neutralized by actions by which it is captured. So broadly, there are three sets of actions that are possible. One, reduce the emissions from the sources, primarily in the area of electricity production, in areas of transport, industry, and also food and agriculture related, especially land use changes. Second is creating or enhancing the nature's way of solving the problem. That is by creating carbon sink in terms of forests, both at land level and also coastal areas. Ocean sink is also being considered. And improving the society so that the society is also healthy and is able to face the kind of situations. Now, this being generic, at country level, our Prime Minister has promised the whole world that we will take 5 actions. One action is we means India will achieve net carbon dioxide emitted from the energy sources to be reduced to zero by the year 2070. The whole world is trying to achieve it by 2050. We have declared that at least by 2070, we will be able to achieve. Now, to achieve this, we said we will do certain things by 2030, and then we will move progressively to this target by 2070. So by 2030, it is we have only another 7 more years to achieve these 4 global commitments. One is we will increase our non-fossil fuel energy capacity to 500 gigawatts. Currently, we have about 150 gigawatts. So we need to make another 350 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel-based energy. We will meet 50% of our energy requirements from renewable energy by 2030. We will reduce projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons by the year 2030. We will also reduce intensity of our economic activities, carbon intensity of our economic activities by 45% by the year 2030. So as far as India is concerned, the climate action commitments are these 5, which is generally referred as the Panchamrit, which is committed by our Prime Minister at this conference of parties. And we have actions on mission mode. There are 8 national missions. Each state has also state level missions. For example, Tamil Nadu is having 3 state level mission which focus on Green Tamil Nadu, wetland mission, and also the climate change mission. So this mission gives you broad areas of actions. Under each mission, there are activities. So if you can look at, you'll see that it focuses on solar energy, enhanced energy efficiency, sustainable habitat, water, national water mission, national mission for sustaining the Himalayan ecosystem, because that's a great ecosystem which is likely to be hit. The ice will melt, means there is going to be flood. And not only that, if all the ice is melting, then there is not going to be water in most of our Indian rivers, which are key to our agricultural activities. Then there is a national mission on Green India, developing or enhancing our forest cover. Tamil Nadu also is having an equivalent mission where the current green cover is about 23%, which we are trying to make it to 33%. So the global target is at least 1/3 of our terrestrial land should be having green cover. Then there is a national mission for sustainable agriculture. There is also a national mission on strategic knowledge for climate change, which works on developing scientific information. And these groups have developed several sub-action areas. For example, if you look at clean energy on power generation front, there are possible actions. Clean technology infrastructure, power storage technologies, transport, especially in terms of biodiesel, ethanol, low carbon transportation systems like e-vehicles, battery technologies. So if any of you are interested, we can talk more on this specifically, because broadly we can say that the climate action universe pertains to, on one end, clean energy. Second, energy as well as material efficiency. Third, how do we protect and improve our environmental resources and environmental services, especially water. And when it comes to agriculture, how do we improve the irrigation practice? How do we reduce dependency on fertilizers, especially chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and waste management, especially energy from waste, land remediation using waste, waste recycling, and also enhancing environmental services, primarily the nature-based solutions, which focuses on enhancing the carbon sink enhancement. Also, there are possibilities for business services to give protection in terms of insurance, logistics, or microfinancing, consultancy services, weather informatory services, and of course, community-based actions to promote individual behavioral change to minimize our energy consumption on day-to-day activities, especially energy minimization. To get into specifics, we can say broadly it is pertaining to energy and water conservation, climate smart infrastructure, and climate resilient production, efficient use of resources, products and services by which we'll be able to mitigate the impacts, and conserving biodiversity. Most of these things are pertaining to adaptation. And when it comes to mitigation, it focuses on renewable energy, energy efficiency, sustainable transport, sustainable forestry, and low carbon products, waste management, and recycling. Renewable energy is one area where a lot of activities are already taking place, depending upon the availability and the potential, especially on wind energy, both onshore and offshore. Tamil Nadu is moving very strongly with reference to offshore. Offshore and onshore wind energy is not possible in all places. It also depends upon the wind potential. So there are certain states where there is high potential for wind energy. Solar energy for different applications is possible. That is another area where a lot of activities are already taking place and a lot of promotional activities take place. So the entrepreneurs could focus on this solar energy sector where it will be booming like anything. The biomass-based energy is another area where there is focus, especially energy from waste, energy from biomass residues. Then, of course, municipal solid waste based projects. These are all areas where renewable energy-based options are taking place. There are also several areas connected with water, because ultimately the first sector that is going to be hit is the water sector. Okay, so understanding the risk, getting prepared to face the risk in terms of early warning systems, to face drought in terms of increasing the water shortage, water storage, and augmenting the water resources to face drought situation, improving water efficiency in different applications, especially irrigation water efficiency. And if you have too much water in terms of heavy rains and flood, then how do we avoid urban flooding especially, and providing associated flood protection, stormwater storage, and especially for coastal areas, identifying the coastal stretches which are more vulnerable, and then developing infrastructure, especially nature-based infrastructure to protect, and also get ready with water pollution control and water purification technologies. Some of these things could be short-term measures, some could be mid-term or long-term measures. Those who work in water sector, there is a lot of opportunities that the climate change brings in. Also, nature-based solutions is another thing, because now people have realized that we need to go back to nature, which has survived for billions of years. So if we need to survive, we need to go back and learn from nature. And one such concept is developing sponge cities. We had number of water bodies which was taking care of the kind of heavy rains, and also was helping us in situations of drought. Some of these water bodies were filled up and crossed and destroyed. Now we need to get back those water bodies and create sponge cities which will be able to absorb the high rainfall and to release that in a slow manner, so that we'll be able to absorb or able to face the drought risk. There are also areas where even changes in our food habits can contribute to improving the environment. For example, here, what you're seeing is a comparison of average greenhouse gas emissions in terms of kg of carbon dioxide per gram of protein from different sources, starting with beef and nuts and grams. And see, non-vegetarian based materials have very high carbon intensity. So to get the same protein, we have different options. So choose the least carbon intensive options. Not only in terms of carbon dioxide emission, in terms of land requirements also, the different food items have got variations in terms of the land requirements. So the climate change adaptation and mitigation is not just energy related actions. It also means actions pertains to the way we consume, especially the food that we consume. And there is a lot of potential for millet and millet based food to be the future insurance, because millets can withstand extreme weather and millets may thrive in the driest and toughest environment. And also we know that millets are having more nutritional content as compared to the other kind of cereals like rice or wheat. So millets will have a great future in terms of addressing our nutrition insecurity as well as the climate crisis. Smart agricultural actions in terms of weather smart, in being informed about the weather changes in planning and operating the climate, the agricultural activities. Water smart in terms of rainwater harvesting, in terms of community management of the water sources, or even using solar pumps for water pumping, or adopting the varieties of seeds which will be resistant to drought, and also being carbon smart or carbon neutral by developing agroforestry, minimizing the tillage, or livestock management, or using biofuels, and of course improving the support to the farmers in terms of being institutional or market smart, so that we are able to use the products without wastage. We produce so many things, and by the time it reaches the consumer or the plates of the consumer, there is a lot of wastage which is taking place because of the lack of preservation and other things. Even that is a climate action. So with reference to any of the inputs of agricultural activity, if we are improving the efficiency, we are contributing to the climate action, because too little of these inputs will lead to food security issues. Too much of it will lead to pollution activities. So the optimum inputs, whether it is water, whether it is the agricultural chemicals or the plant nutrients, or whether it is the irrigational practice or the tillage practice or the fertilization practice or the weed or the insect control practice, you'll be able to see a connection with energy and the climate change or the climate action. So if you take context specific transformative actions which are tailored to the socio-economic conditions and the ecology of your given situation, there is number of possibilities to reduce the wastages and also reduce the risk and increasing the yield or reducing the production losses or better functioning of the markets and create synergies between several of sustainable development goals. So it's not just action on climate. The climate action will also contribute to many of the other sustainable development goals, especially agriculture related climate action will strongly contribute to poverty, hunger, and health, water and sanitation, life on land, and life below land. Another area where such actions are required is eco-restoration, preventing land degradation, deforestation, a control of land use changes, and making erosion control programs, soil conservation programs, promoting agroforestry. Only thing, all these things can be connected with climate change. So how you will be able to connect that is what, if you know, you will be also able to tap the funding which will be available from global resources, because there is a commitment that developed countries will pump in about 100 billions of US dollars per year globally to address this climate change. So the kind of actions related to forest management which are helpful in climate change mitigation as well as adaptation is one key area where a lot of activities will take place. Another area of action is how do we address loss of biodiversity by creation of park or protected areas or biodiversity corridors, or how do we develop even payment for ecosystem services by which people are having an incentive to protect and take care of biodiversity. In cities or urban areas also, this is a great challenge as well as opportunities, because urbanization is happening and most of us are moving towards cities. So the kind of impact that we have talked is going to be more severe in urban areas in terms of floods and in terms of the impacts of cyclones or other kind of disasters. And not only that, the urban areas which have less open space and less green space is going to face more impact of this heat. This scientifically we call it as urban heat island effect. So as compared to an area where there is open space with greenery, if there is a place without greenery, there is a substantial increase in terms of the temperature. Okay, the rise could be even 4 degree, 5 degree, depending upon the location. So urban cooling is one area where activities, lot of activities and international actions are taking place, because when urban heating is happening, the immediate response that we do is to use air conditioners. And when we use air conditioners, it is going to increase our energy consumption. And when we increase our energy consumption, we are going to increase the global warming. So instead of that, how we can address the urban heating by natural measures. Also, waste management is another area where all the cities we know are facing challenges, though there are technologies. Because of the lack of integration of different elements associated with waste management, still we have not come to a stage where we can claim that our cities have got good waste management systems. Now, this waste management is also connected with climate change, because anything that we waste is produced using energy. So if we reduce wastage, that itself is saving energy. Second, there is also possibility to recover energy from certain types of waste, especially the biodegradable waste by bio-CNG or biogas plants. So also, if you are able to convert this waste, biodegradable waste into compost and use that, this is another way of creating carbon sink. So waste management is another area where actions could take place. Associated actions are also required, especially on coastal areas, in terms of addressing the coastal erosion control, and especially sea level rise could flood certain coastal areas. So coastal development controls, creating natural ways of sea coastal erosion controls, and beach protection actions are also opportunities to address the issues of climate change. There are also associated problems in the ocean due to climate change, because climate change, we said, is due to increase in carbon dioxide. How when carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere increases, the ocean, which is a great sink for carbon dioxide, will sink more carbon dioxide, which means our ocean will become more acidified, the pH level, which will have impact on fisheries. So the development of certain specific fish, and development of even marine protected areas, developing fishing cooperatives, and also providing marine extension services, so is also the way. And for coastal protection, mangroves is a nature-based protector. So mangrove plantation on coastal areas is one key area of actions, because this is a nature-based protection. Not only it protects the coast, it also is a great sink for carbon dioxide. The carbon sink potential of mangrove is very high. So mangrove plantation is one area of key action that we take. So to summarize, we can say that there are several areas where entrepreneurs could be energized to tackle climate change, basically through innovation related to providing the kind of support services related to the different areas I have indicated, which broadly relates to climate mitigation and adaptation. And when it comes to mitigation, it broadly pertains to energy efficiency, decarbonization, looking at renewable energy. The entrepreneurs also needs to be helped to develop business know-how, market connections, technical capacity, so that they'll be able to provide the kind of support. So I congratulate the organizers for taking up this webinar. I hope this webinar have sensitized the participants. At the same time, we should also be aware of the behavior trends of the people. There was a recent survey on consumer sustainability behavior, where they have assessed the concerns of consumers and their readiness to adopt sustainable behavior, and especially in terms of actions to purchase sustainable products, or readiness to pay a little higher price for sustainability. And the survey results indicate that though there is a great concern, very high concern, about 70%, and above people are concerned with reference to sustainability, but in terms of actions, it is still poor. So there is also a need to sensitize the consumers with reference to the long-term benefit of climate action, because the consumers always will be interested in the immediate benefit. The climate change or the climate action benefits are not today you act and tomorrow or today itself you are getting benefit. It is something which the old generation or the next generation is going to get. So sensitizing the consumers is another area by creating awareness about sustainable services, awareness that sustainable products are existing, and uh, how to make available sustainable products to the people, how to create trust, especially there is a lot of greenwashing taking place, which means products and other goods are sold or marketed claiming that they are climate friendly and environmental friendly, but in reality they are not so. So how do we distinguish that? How do we ensure that the claims of with reference to the different products or services are correct or not? And there are also quality concerns with reference to green products and sustainable products. Many times people feel that they are inferior in quality or they are higher in price. So affordability. There is also the social challenge of our reluctance to change, live with what we are used to. So how do we bring in a social challenge? Could be another area where your group should be able to operate. And to share that there are many such initiatives, individuals and groups we are working in our country and also abroad. So if you are working in a particular domain and if you look at the websites, you'll be able to get good ideas and also people who are already taking action and converting that into business opportunity. This is one such ecopreneur, Mansi Shah. She is the founder of this enterprise, which she has called it as Gift Green, where basically she was concerned about the national flag problem. Normally, when we celebrate Independence Day or Republic Day, we use plastic flags and then throw that. So, to address that, he took an innovative way to make these flags recyclable. Not only that, she introduced flags with the seeds so that after the Independence Day or Republic Day celebration, you can plant your flag, which is disposable, and that will lead to creation of another plant. Of course, she also has developed many other innovative products. There are also several other ecopreneurs. Another example is the case of Seed Trees Technologies. This is basically a technology platform where millions of people get or give their individual contributions to projects which restore and protect worldwide coastal ecosystem. So this is basically a platform which connects the individuals who are interested in contributing to coastal ecosystem protection, and they channelize that willingness to develop coastal ecosystem products. There is another company called Block Power. It's basically a clean technology startup, and they use clean energy to help disadvantaged communities to benefit from more sustainable living spaces or healthier environment. So look around for such people to get some ideas. Of course, innovation has to come from individuals, but we can also look around to see how people are using these opportunities to take this further. To summarize, I'll say that when we talk about climate action, basically we are looking at actions to reduce the risk of different types of disasters. and this could be achieved primarily in terms of decarbonization of our energy systems by mitigating uh, the climate change impact, by improving energy efficiency, and also switching over to clean energy resources. Another area where action is required is improving our urban resilience, especially that of the urban poor, to face the kind of climate extremities and associated disasters. Carbon sink enhancement, reducing forest degradation, and investing in forest and protected areas are another area where climate smart development is possible. So we should also take up innovations through investment in research and development so that we'll be able to come out with cleaner products and also actions by which we can improve our environment. So there are several possibilities. It all depends upon how efficiently and effectively we'll be able to develop solutions so that we'll be able to benefit, especially the vulnerable groups, the vulnerable communities, and how soon we'll be able to do it. Because the window of opportunities are getting closed very fast. Already 1.2 degree, and we said it is projected to become 1.5. And if we don't act well by end of this century itself, we may face situation of 4 degree or 5 degree. So which is going to have economy-wide impacts in terms of disasters and damages. So the kind of development on one end we make are bound to get destroyed if we don't take appropriate actions in terms of climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, protection of our natural resources, especially water resources and marine resources, by taking appropriate actions pertaining to pollution prevention, protection of biodiversity and ecosystems, so that we'll be able to move to a circular economic systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Actually, there are many comments in the chat box which says, which appreciates the webinar is really successful one, and it was a information-packed slides. That is, each of your slides can be very useful for our CSO members to refer in their organizations or in their activities. Thank you very much, sir. Can I ask if there is any question?
I will share the slides which you can distribute.
Yeah, can we ask the members if there is any questions to you, sir? So that,
Yes.
so in case any of the members would like to ask a direct question to sir, you are welcome.
Can I comment, Bindu?
Yes, sir, please.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
It's not a question because the presentation is very comprehensive. It is very informative, involving all aspects in terms of climate change. Of course, as you have rightly said, mostly the developed countries are responsible for this much emission and impact of climate change. But today, developing countries are also responsible, and we are also committed to these mitigation and adaptation activities. I have learned the concept of our social minimum and ecological minimum. We have in
Ecological maximum.
Ecological.
Across the board.
Yes. The social minimum we have not yet met, but the ecological maximum, that for which mostly the developed countries are responsible. And of course, there are a lot of areas he has mentioned for taking up in our local level. That is one of the things which is attracted is biodiversity. This millet is one of the new one, climate smart agriculture. This can be adopted. So many areas you have mentioned. But my main concern is that though we are talking all those things in this commercial era, for example, production of vehicles or household equipments, or what all the materials we buy from the market today, all those are leading to all, or the production of all those things are still continue with the carbon emission and related. We find it very difficult for waste management even at the household level, because those materials we are buying from the supermarkets, which we cannot dispose at our level. And also the household gadgets which we are using, from air condition to the fridge to the all, even electronics equipments, computer, fridge, everything. It's just disposing. If it is not usable, means just disposing, buying new one. So it's a problem which even beyond the limit of the common people at the grassroots level, even at the urban level. So of course, there is a huge limit from our part, but still there are areas in which we can work. So I'm just sharing the concern, though you have described all those things, the big concerns still remain with us. Thank you.
Of course, it's not just enough that we all express concern. We should also start action. Okay. And what I can do is what is within my control, or what I can influence to control. That is where we act. And once such actions start and take a momentum, with, of course, the drive which happens at international level, national level, and state level, let us hope that we will be able to move to a situation, especially the younger generations. We should be able to educate them, and also by our examples to have controls on consumerism, because if we have to be sustainable, we should be able to live within the limits.
Yeah.
Because the economy is so developed and so propagated in such a way that there is not available. But now we have come to a stage, we have started realizing the limits. So I hope things will change. That's the positive thinking. And what is within our control, our area of activities, how we can try to address this when you organize an event or even your area of activities. That is where we need to focus, and to hope that all others will fall in line in their own domains. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to introduce, he's Dr. Raghuraman Das. He is running a very big NGO, Trivandrum,
Okay.
by name of Mitra Niketan.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, Bindu ma'am, may I say something?
Sheila ma'am, please.
Yeah. Dr. Joseph, thank you very, very much for your exhaustive and intensive presentation. It was really helpful for some of us who have already been involved to such exposures. Again, as Dr. Raghu had mentioned, I also have a few concerns, because most of what has been said and what is being done by the government is, to my knowledge and information, restricted to urban areas, and mostly to urban areas. You look at the smart city development, smart city projects, look at the different missions, mostly involved in the covering the urban areas and some of the rural areas. But my concern is that as NGOs, where most of us are working in with farmers, for them, the whole issue of the whole idea of transforming, translating what you have talked to the farmers is way, way beyond our possibility, particularly at the NGO level. So that is one thing. Of course, we did talk of LDCs to NDCs to LDCs. There are a lot of LDCs happening in terms of solar, use of solar energy, for improving the forest cover and things like that. But those are unsung heroic acts which we do not have much information about. So if some kind of a compendium can be made of this. It would help many NGOs working in the rural areas, particularly with in agriculture. That is that's one of my very serious concerns, because there's so much happening in
Yeah,
agriculture.
I fully agree with you. And we know why our governments focus on cities.
Yeah, I don't want to
Because,
talk about because you don't know what's going
let's
to
not
happen to
get
you.
into that. But
Correct.
and I would like to share one initiative. You'll be able to get more details about that from the net. Okay, there is an initiative called WASCA. Okay, WASCA. If you just search net, you will get WASCA. So this was a initiative to support rural areas, because we know about MG Narega, correct? Mahatma Gandhi rural livelihood.
Livelihood.
Yes. So basically, objective of that is to create livelihood opportunities. So how this MG Narega scheme could be used to develop water security. Okay, that was the objective. This was implemented in 2 districts in Tamil Nadu. The details you'll be able to get. So there is no additional support. The MG Narega project, but under that project, what action you will take? And that action, how do you look at and channelize to address climate change in terms of developing farm pond, in terms of converting your local waste into compost and use it. Okay, so using an existing scheme itself to generate several climate related actions.
This could be done at the panchayat level, because the panchayat
Yeah.
has money.
Yes,
When it comes to individual farmers, individual groups, financing is the major concern for all of us. Finance and low cost technologies are very expensive. Very
I don't know,
expensive.
that is there. That is where the innovative way has to be there. Second, when we say low cost, what is the cost? Are we looking at the long-term cost and benefit? That is where community-based organization should be able to convince people. Okay, today's cost may be less, but you consider 10 years cost. That is the cost. That sensitization is where groups like yours should be able to propagate. I know it is a challenge, but that's the need of the hour.
One more thing, sir, with the permission of Bindu ma'am, just what I also would think is very important on the part of the government and institutions, universities like yours, that this kind of a climate change education, basically a climate change, has to be made compulsory, mandatory in the school syllabuses and the college syllabuses. So this is for the future generation. This would be very, very helpful, which I think is not available at the moment.
It is also there, but
not to the extent to which, as a college student, as a student,
for example,
they require.
all the undergraduates, they undergo one compulsory course related to environmental education. It is mandatory, including engineering education. But the seriousness at which such courses are taught and it is taken is something which has to change. And
Correct.
Even school level, we have environmental science, EVS, generally they call. Okay, so the courses are there, but the field that these are related to our life, that kind of delivery and understanding is something which should take place. Courses are not for exam. This kind of courses are for life. In that way, it needs to be delivered and connected with the reality. So that is where a lot of improvements are required. But
instead of environmental science, you go straight to climate action, climate change, then maybe that could catch the attention of the students and the importance and need of it.
As I have told at the beginning, climate action is one action, because several other areas also needs to improve. So we should be able to see the connections. For example, poverty is to be addressed, hunger is to be addressed, health is to be addressed. And
Correct.
when you address that, of course, even energy, there are millions of people who are yet to get clean energy. So we need to have more energy projects. Okay. But
And women participation also, sir.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is very important.
yes.
So unless the women get an understanding of this, and
Yes.
rural women do not have an understanding.
If we are able to support women with some kind of livelihood, that itself is like they are preparing themselves to face all these climate change.
Challenges of
Yeah,
climate change.
Yeah.
That is
Not
very
only you look at this VASCA project, VASCA phase 2 is happening. It is happening in 17 states of our country. So rural level, that's a good example. Of course, that is not enough. What is required is convergence of different activities. There is no necessity for a climate change based program or project. In all projects, there is a possibility to link it. That is the way we should look at it. It's not a separate mission where somebody will have some project to address. In all projects, there is a possibility.
Thank you.
But again, can we add like, since the world is looking climate change with seriousness, there's going to be a lot of funding is going to come to this area. So naturally, if NGOs want to play a role in this, we would need to educate or made aware of all these activities, and our team has to be trained in this. So yes.
That is true.
Yes, there is likely to be more funding, but there is also reluctance. Okay, commitment is there, but still.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's been happening for at least 7, 8 years.
Yes.
This 10 billion funding is coming for so long now. So it was nice. It was a very good interaction on.
Thank you. Thank you.
One
Now,
of the members, thank you very much, sir.
I'll share my presentation with Bindu. You can circulate it.
Please.
Also welcome to get in touch with you, because in such webinars we can't talk specific things. If you have some specific area of actions where you need any support, where we can work together.
We will consult you, sir. We will consult you. We would like to consult you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.